Alright, I'm going to start by talking to you guys about a story that my economics professor told me about how taxation in California and the federal government is oppressing companies and corporations and individuals in the United States. And this happens to be his brother. This man, he built his company from the ground up. He was an entrepreneur. He paid all his taxes. He went through all the fees and all the whole process to start up this company. And after a certain amount of time, he decides to sell it. And he sells it, and due to the capital gains tax, he only received 50% of his profit, and the rest went to the federal government and to the California state. So he was infuriated and frustrated about the tax laws because he's been paying his taxes and paying all his dues to the government, to Big Sam, Uncle Sam, and he's like, you know what, heck with this. I'm going to go overseas, and I'm going to go to London, and I'm going to start a business there because the tax laws are less in London and in Europe than they are in the U.S. So, in this speech, I don't want to tell you how to vote. I just want you to understand what happens when you increase taxes in the society, and what happens to the economy. So, and the standards that need to be met to make a really good balanced economy. So I'll be using interviews, in news articles, and statistics to help you understand this concept. And hopefully this will allow you to understand the value of full tax reform in California. Because personally, I think the tax laws are outrageous and crippling businesses. So, I wanted to start with talking to you guys about the supply and demand curve. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but there's a certain amount of supply in the economy that they can provide, and there's a certain amount of demand that is going to be met. And I'm going to be talking about demand, and in a macro scale, it's called aggregate demand. And so I'll define that for you. Aggregate demand is the total amount of newly produced U.S. final goods and services demanded by all parties at various price levels. Aggregate demand is broken down into a simple formula. So it equals consumption spending, investment spending, government spending, imports and exports. So I'll be talking to you about the consumption, investment, and government spending. I'll be leaving out the imports and exports. For consumption spending, it basically is the total amount of newly produced final goods and services demanded by households. So influences on consumption spending, there's a long list. One of them is changes in tax rates. So a decrease in tax rates will increase in consumption spending. Because when you decrease in the taxes, you have more ability to spend more money on more units of satisfaction. And with investment spending is defined as the amount of newly produced final goods and services demanded by firms and amounts spent by individuals on new homes. So influences on the investment spending, again, one of them happens to be changes in tax rates. And a decrease in tax rates causes an increase in investment spending. So when businesses see a decrease in tax rates, they're more inclined to buy the product that they need, the piece of equipment or the building that they want, because the tax rates are lower and they'll get a better price for it. And government spending is basically defined as the total amount of newly produced final goods and services demanded by all levels of domestic government. So influences on government spending, if the economy needs a stimulus, so we voted on the stimulus package, which I personally think was way too much to help stimulate the economy, and we'll end up paying for that later down the road. And it's projected that 40% of our GDP, gross domestic product, will be paying off interest on the loans that we are incurring in all this money to pay for all these different things. But so yeah, that's an example. But if you look at government spending, it can't continue for that long. It can't sustain itself because if consumption and investment spending is down, then there's no way to get taxes from it or from getting money from it. So, thus, an increase in taxation will have a contractionary influence on the economy when we want expansionary right now, because we're on the brink of recession again, and our employment rate is so high. We want jobs to be created. So I'm going to give you an example, such as increasing the taxation on millionaires in society. I'm going to tell you right now, like, they're going to find ways to get around the system because they're millionaires for a reason. They know how to get through the tax laws, and they can probably find ways to get their money in offshore accounts or put their money in other funds to make it look like they're not making that much money. Let's say like they didn't find those ways, and we increase the tax on them. What incentive do they have to purchase franchises in other companies like Taco Bell, Burger King, and all those other things that could potentially create jobs, or investments in other corporations that help fund their operations? I mean, they would have no incentive. And increasing in taxes will only take more money out of circulation from the general population, and tightening up cash flow in businesses that will no longer have the ability to purchase things and an ability to expand. So in an article written and published by the Wall Street Journal called Cali to Business, Get Out, quote says, California has long been America's most extensive taxers and regulator of business. But at the same time, the state had assets that seemed to offset its economic disincentives, and famously sunny climate, world-class public university system that produced a talented local workforce, and the list goes on. So in the past, taxes weren't too hard to deal with because we have such an awesome climate. We have great universities where the workforce is being trained and equipped. So in the 60s and the early 70s, the economy still continued to grow. But as of right now, it's not. And in surveys, executives are, a quote from this article, surveys, executives regularly call California one of the country's most toxic business environments and one of the least likely places to open or expand a new company. And a quote from the Tax Foundation, at this present moment in time, California imposes the nation's second heaviest tax burden on businesses. So, we're just oppressing business, and we're trying to expand and bring the unemployment down, but we're not allowing them to do that. And we're wondering why unemployment is so high, and it's because taxes are so strenuous on the business. So according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, they lay out graphs of unemployment and labor force and all that stuff. With the unemployment of California currently staying around 11%, which is 3 points higher than the national average at 8.1%, you can tell that unemployment is still an issue here. So creating new businesses or expanding is something that California cannot afford not to have. You got to have it, and it has to happen soon, or else we're going to go bankrupt. So where did all this start? A quote from this Cali to Business article. California began to tarnish its business-friendly reputation in 1974 when the Democrat Jerry Brown became